Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of our RICS Tech Partner Program with Trace Solutions. My name is Andrew Knight. I've been with RICS for over 10 years now, and I work with the standards, regulatory and thought leadership team here, with my role looking at the whole effect of data and tech right across the built and natural environments. So I'm really glad today to have Kevin Grice with me from Trace Solutions. So welcome, Kevin.
Hello there, how you doing?
Very well, great to have you on board today. And I know we're going to talk about digital transformation today, but before that, I'd really like a bit of background for our viewers and listeners on what's the background of Trace, your team, your skills, experience, a bit of a backstory.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So yeah, Trace Solutions was formed back in 1974, actually. First people in the UK to develop property management systems. So you could say we were the first prop tech company in the country, actually. Now, as you can imagine, being in business that length of time, we've got a huge body of experience, especially in the UK property market. One important thing about Trace is we employ as many property experts as we do software developers and digital experts. So it's a really, really good blend. The guys and girls all work together on very closely on package solutions for our customers. We're actually based in the City of London, between the creative hub of Clerkenwell and the tech centre of Silicon Roundabout. So it's a really nice area, really nice area to be in. With a blend of design and digital. You know, it's actually lovely. Interestingly, we're an employee-owned firm, so rather like John Lewis. So we've got a very loyal and committed team. As they say, I saw the Waitrose advert the other day, and they said that when you own something, you care more about it. And I really think that's true and what we see at our company, which is really nice to have. Our software, enterprise grade, it's aimed at companies that manage property, including commercial and residential, owner investors, occupiers, housing associations, councils, and really other public sector bodies. So quite a wide range of clients, but in the property management sector. Interestingly, though, it's off the shelf and it's rather large. So it's kind of designed to do everything that the larger property firms need to do. From having a reliable database to having specialist property accounting, from service charges to legal to compliance, and so on and so forth. So it covers the whole breadth of property management disciplines that a large organisation would have. Got a lot of very famous clients, very large ones, and of course loads of smaller ones too. Interestingly, a lot of those have been with us for a very long time. I think that our longest is about 40 years, or just over 40 years, that have been clients of Trace. And I think that longevity is really because we have an honest approach to business, and of course the expertise in the field. As for me, I'm the Director of Software Engineering at Trace. Started my career as a humble software developer in accounting systems well over 30 years ago now. Doesn't seem possible, really. Time
flies when you're having fun.
Oh, it goes too quickly. I rose through the ranks, with positions in engineering and support, second line support, and working with customers, and actually in property management systems. And now I find myself as a board director at Trace, leading the charge with our property management products. So
that's great, Kevin. And it's always so great to hear, and hopefully it's not becoming a cliche, that mix of property and tech people. I think it has to be a key piece of any kind of supplier in the industry, that they need that mix of knowledge, because I think for better or for worse, it is full of nuances, like every area of business, and the built and natural environment has some quirkiness and some inside knowledge that you need to build the right kind of solutions. I think that's really a key thing to highlight. Well, that's great. So the theme today is digital transformation, which hopefully you can explain more easily than I can say it. So tell us about your journey of digital transformation, Kevin.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll start by just giving you a bit about our model, which kind of fits into the digital transformation sort of story. So our business model is we supply off-the-shelf solutions to integrate great clients. That's quite unusual, because a lot of our competitors do a lot of bespoke work. But with us, when there's an enhancement, we share that with all our clients. We post a couple of major upgrades a year, really easy for everyone to take. And that means everyone's using the latest and most powerful software that's the most compliant software. So that's really good. But when we started to see the rise of the internet and mobile devices and whatnot, and the sheer power that technology could bring to software, we had to make some choices about how we went about deploying our software. Now, we obviously wanted to exploit the power in our own software, but in how we were going to do that. how do we take a great big enterprise system and actually exploit the power to modern ways of working? Now, most of our competitors kind of took their desktop systems and put them online, which didn't exploit the power of the internet at all, really. Or they started parallel systems, much simpler, no great power, good, but not so good for those enterprise level clients that've got lots of complexity that they need to deal with. So we took a third route, and I think the only ones to take that third route, which was to try to retain the power of the core system, but use the power of the internet to improve each process in turn. Okay. Now that, of course, is how the government's digital service were able to transform so many processes so successfully. A true digital transformation.
So is there a particular example of how the government really got that right? Because clearly they have so many touch points with consumers and businesses. Is there a particular example where, and it might be quite focused on it arguably, but where they really got that right?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think a really good example is, which many of us would be really familiar with, is how the government how the government actually transformed the taxing your vehicle process. And probably one we're all familiar with. How did we tax a vehicle? I don't know if you remember, but in the old days, you used to get a paper reminder. You used to have to take your insurance certificate and your MOT and whatnot down to the post office, and you had to present it to the person behind the desk, and they'd fill in some forms and whatnot, and they'd update the system. And that was actually quite inefficient. It was all took time and was quite prone to error. And there's a lot of manual steps involved with that. And of course, it's a bit of a pain for us. And the DVLA transformed that into a much easier and quicker online process. You receive a paper reminder still, but you now go online within a few clicks. You present, I've got this, I've got that. It checks it for you automatically to say your car's MOT and tax and whatnot, and the job is done. It's absolutely simple. The key thing there is the core DVLA system has been updated far quicker and probably more accurately than if the paper-based method had been used. Now, that's easier for us, easier for you, easier for me, faster and cheaper for DVLA, less manual steps, less paper and whatnot. Data's probably more accurate. But the connected services, like the ANPR cameras, for example, you're checking for untouched vehicles as they're driving around the country, they're now, because they're using more up-to-date data, they're instantly able to make use of that data. So automated systems start to be able to come into their own. And the beauty of all this is we haven't had to change the core system, where the details are stored. It's just changing the way the users have interacted with that system, which is really interesting. So I was kind of thinking, well, how did the government get that so right? It's really interesting. And I think actually we should probably start with how they got it so wrong. Which is, probably the worst place to start, but let's start there. And if we think about NHS systems, and the government had a terrible reputation for wasting billions of pounds of taxpayers' money on NHS IT systems that never worked, never were successful. No working systems ever delivered. It was a few years ago now, but I think it's all still in our minds, especially as it was our money. Government at the time said we've got to do something about it, and they brought in this guy Francis Maude, who was given the job of sorting all this out. And his basic thinking was there has to be a better way of doing this. He, I think it was back in 2009 actually, commissioned Martha Lane Fox, who's famous for lastminute.com, to come up with a strategy. And she went on to help create this government digital service, and its mantra was that everything should be digital by default. Okay, so it launched the gov.uk platform, which transforms service delivery. I mean, you've probably seen it with your tax returns, and I don't know, even booking a doctor's appointment these days, whatever. It's all gov.uk service, and that really transformed the way service delivery happened. Now, Francis Maude actually set up the government digital service with this guy, Mike Bracken, at its head, and he has been given he has been a real inspiration for me actually in the way I've approached transformation at Trace, and he had this really great insight that technology, internet era technology, allows us to get away forever from those big IT projects that drown in their own complexity.
So what was his definition of this digital transformation? Did he put some snappy, quite easy to understand definition around it?
Yeah, exactly, he did. And I think how he summarized it was really good. I read digital transformation is about using internet era technology and principles to create new organizational procedures. And for me, that's kind of quite a good statement, because it's not about the technology. It's about coming up with better procedures. The technology is the enabling bit. So it's thinking about the new processes and the new procedures, and the new business processes, new business procedures, and actually how the technology can help enable those. And I think Mike got it bang on with what he had here, actually. And one thing to remember, and I think this is really important, it's not about adding complexity to your existing systems. Yeah, our friend Heath Robinson had a lovely golf testing machine.
Yeah.
It's a lovely example. But the point of it is that it's a connected system. You make a change in one place, then the whole system needs to be connected. If there's a problem in one part of the system, the whole system grinds to a halt. So it's hard to update. It's complex to modify. It's a nightmare. So we need to start thinking differently how we develop systems. Gone are the days of these great big large projects, IT projects, or even physical projects, which can easily break, are brittle.
So what's been your experience of digital transformation, and maybe what are the particular challenges about making it happen?
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of, if we kind of go back to the Heath Robinson thinking, and actually start by thinking, digital transformation should be thought about more like separate processes, specific kit for specific jobs, as opposed to great big enterprise grade systems. We had a particular challenge for our customers is data quality. Okay, and I think that's probably an industry-wide challenge, to be honest. But how do they effectively collect and manage data that's external to their organization? How do they get that into their system in a better way, in a more efficient way, and improve the quality of that data, but in a cost-effective way? Because obviously, you've got to bear that in mind. You can't, the sky's the limit of trying to improve quality in terms of the cost to do that. So how can we do that in a cost-effective way? Now, obviously, we want to connect systems seamlessly wherever we can, and we want to use AI to improve the quality of data and all the rest of it. But I think we have to recognize a lot of data is still collected manually, and it still has the human touching point which we need to interact with, and how can we improve that? We started thinking about how we could improve that quality and manage it without actually compromising that enterprise system, because that was the trick. How do we keep the quality of the enterprise system but actually improve the whole process? And what we thought about is a lot of the potential users who are the touching points of where the data is collected aren't actually allowed to get anywhere near that enterprise system, for fear of actually compromising it, or problems of access and compliance and all the rest of it. So how did we deal with that? Well, our kind of sort of inspiration was that, or realization was that these individual processes that could actually be spun off and improved and perfected, without having to compromise that sort of central core. Going back to that DVLA example, the touching points have been improved, but the core is actually sort of untouched, if you like, and secure. So it's very similar to that DVLA example. And actually, for us, a really, really, really simple example is the business process of putting a debtor on stop, which is an accounting process. Typically, you might interact with a customer, the person who was doing that would be using a screen like this. Now, you can't give that screen to anyone who doesn't understand what's going on with that screen. But actually, there's a stop flag here that's kind of buried in a detail screen. If we rethink this, we don't actually need that to happen. If the business process is to put the data on stop, why can't we have something that is much simpler, that is published to the user that is actually doing that only allows them to interact with putting the debtor on stop. And obviously it tells them the debtor, it confirms who the debtor is, it gives them the ability to put the debtor on stop. So, you know, we can publish that to the person who needs to do that business process, as opposed to this screen, which actually we can't really publish to the person doing the business process because there's too much else going on the screen which they could interact with and mess up. So it's kind of starting to rethink about how we develop those systems. Now, the beauty of that is that it means we can now engage all the people that are involved in the process, not just those expert back office users. And that means we're opening up the system to the real end users. Now, the result of all that is that we have better, faster, more modern processes and importantly, central reduced costs or reduced central costs, I should say, because yeah, at the end of the day, we have to balance all these things out. But the best bit of all this is that the accurate data we have in our core systems means that we'll now have the confidence to automate more and actually, you know, go for an exception-based model where we can automate the majority of things and actually flag up the exceptions and we can deal with those. And if we've got the quality of data, we can then start doing that.
So I presume there was the odd bump on the road. I mean, what are the lessons learned? Nothing ever goes smoothly, does it?
Nothing goes smoothly. There's, you know, there's 30 years of experience that taught me many things in digital transformation. I can tell you that much. Well, you know, to start it all off, I think it comes down to people, and I think you're going to need a good team. Of course, the temptation always is to build your digital team from within your IT department, and I don't think that's a very good idea. Yeah, the problem is with that, they won't have all the skills. Some of the skills, yes, not all the skills. They'll know all the barriers though. You know, they'll probably apply old thinking to new problems. And of course, with this, there's lots of hierarchy to get through, to get change through. And what we found is you need a modern digital team that really understand the business problems, but also understand the new tech and the new ways of thinking. So, you know, what you really want to do is take your best people and mix them with people from other disciplines, especially those who understand business processes, of course, and actually come up with your team that way. I've seen a lot of companies that you know, have a lot of digital skills, but they kind of forget the business skills as well. So really important to blend digital skills and business skills together to get your new team. Now, important thing here, very flat. If you can avoid hierarchies, you know, foster a spirit of innovation. We want to get change through. You know, I know it's very difficult at the moment, but with the pandemic. But if you have them all physically sitting in the same place, that's always good. It makes decisions and development time and thinking and innovation quicker and faster and actually more accurate. Lots of online tools as we're using today to actually help with that. But if we can, we really want to bring the clan together, you know, once or twice a week if we can, to actually help with that innovation and momentum. An interesting thing, if all the people are good at different things, and sort of highlighted by my lovely colours here, you know, you're probably on the right lines.
Yes, exactly.
But obviously, watch out for SPOFs, single points of failure. It's a balance between, you know, the diversity of the skills versus actually having single points of failure in the department. So that's a bit of a challenge. So watch out for that one. But flat teams wherever you can. Obviously, you want to make them agile is always good. And as I said, the sitting in the same place is a key thing if we can make that happen. Now, you've got your team.
Yeah.
You're going to need a good business lead. Okay. Someone who's actually got authority from the business, who really understands the day-to-day and the practicalities of change, and I think that's really important. I've got this thing here, bureaucratic hacker, and I've heard them referred to as that, and actually it's a really good way of thinking about it, because they understand they're not there to break red tape, but they understand how to get around red tape and actually pave the way for change to occur. So I'm not talking about bulldozing things through, but people who understand the reason things are the way they are, and, you know, can we do something better, and actually how can we implement that system in a better way. So those business people are really important. And lastly, I think it's really important to have some political cover.
Now that sounds a bit Machiavellian. What do you mean by political cover?
Well, that's a good point. So, it's someone in the organisation who's usually very senior, with influence, in the company or the organisation, who can deal with the political blockers and fallout of change. I think it's a really, really important problem. What's an important thing to have people will the organisation will resist change, so you need to have someone at the top who's going to be your friend to help you drive that change through and remove those blockers. Now, Mike said, and actually I agree with this, digital transformation isn't about replacing old skills with new, it's about balancing old skills with new, putting them to work together. And I think that's a really good way of thinking about how you position the digital transformation team. Yeah,
that's good. No, and it's great to have that focus on the people, the team, because ultimately this is always about people, both in terms of people enabling and, dare I say it, blocking and not smoothing a process this through. And it's a new term, that political cover, which I shall try and remember that one. So if we've covered the kind of the team and the people bit, what's a kind of an easy to remember kind of set of principles about digital transformation? How do people begin to start this journey? Let's hope they've taken on board that shape of the team, those kind of roles. But what are the principles?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I go back to my friend in the government. Well, it's not I don't know really, but Mike Bracken. He set out some principles, which actually we also followed, and I would recommend. A lot of it does seem obvious, but it really is so easy to overlook the obvious, especially when we're all involved in the day-to-day. So sort of stepping back, going back to basic principles, and making sure some of these basic things don't get overlooked. And we'll talk about some of that now. Really, I think it's all about delivery. Okay. There's no point working on projects that takes months and years to deliver. They never get there. By the time they're out, things would have moved on anyway. Okay, things change all the time, and I think that seems to be happening faster as time goes on. Maybe it's an age thing, Andrew. I don't know, but it seems to be that with the strides in technology and people driving business, change seems to be happening faster and faster and faster and faster. So there's no point having projects that take years to deliver. We've got to think differently about that. It's all about delivery. If you can, fix the easiest problems to fix first, that give you the most business benefit, because that's going to give the team momentum. It's going to demonstrate success. So if you can start small, start on something that's going to give that business benefit that people can see, it's going to be fantastic. It's always going to be easier to start on a greenfield site. What I mean by that is, if you've got a system which you're trying to evolve into something else, then there's probably a lot of ifs and whats and buts within that system which you need to deal with and try to simplify it. And that can be quite difficult, and you'll get people saying, well, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that, blah, blah, blah. If you've got something completely new, which you can iterate and improve over time, then your people will get some benefit straight away, and then they'll continue to build on that success, and the process will become easier and wider. Government did that with some small services, and they've started to increase the services one at a time as they've moved on out. So if you can start greenfield, all the better. Not always possible, but that will be a good tip from me. A thing to think about is who actually judges success. It's hard for me. It's hard, but actually I think it's the user. The user is the one that's going to be the person who actually uses the software. It's not the consultant, not the IT department, not the manager. The user is always right. We've heard that expression in computing forever, but they're the ones that we need to engage to use the systems. And if we can get them using it, then we'll start to see success. That's really important. I think it's important to get stuff out fast. It's the opposite of taking years and months to develop stuff. If we can break things down into working deliveries, be that internally working deliveries, which we can say, that's good, let's iterate it again before we go to our end users, or get it to end users quickly, which we can get feedback and they get business benefit without getting frustration. and then we can iterate to get some more some more benefit. Fantastic. The key is to getting deliveries fast. Now, obviously, what I'm talking about there starts to overlap agile methodologies and agile ways of working, which don't just apply, interestingly, to developing computer software. We can actually think of agile to all sorts of things. But the point is, and we'll say that for another session, but the point is that achievable small steps is the key thing, that we actually get a business benefit that people can see and feel. And if they can do that, we start to see success, which I think is really important. It is really easy to forget we're in the thick of it all, but is what we're doing faster, simpler, better? We don't want to make our end user's job harder. We want to make everyone's job, be it the end user or us in the back office, the business sponsor. We want to make the whole process faster, simpler, better. If not, what are we doing? So step back, ask those 3 simple questions. And actually, this is quite nice. There's a poster from the government's Digital Service Development Department, I think, which they had up. It's not about dumbing down. It's about opening up. Simplifying things isn't about making them dumber. It's about actually making systems that are easier to use, that we can engage more of the end users and get them in the business process. And if things, will get used if they're easy to use. And I think that's really important. So quite a nice thing to sort of think about. And another one of Mike's quotes, making digital services so good that people prefer to use them. For me, for our company, it's all about creating systems that can engage all the people that are involved in the process. It's really important to be able to do that.
That's great. Now, I mean, clearly, in many respects, this kind of approach is certainly different. I mean, perhaps it's too strong to say at odds, but it's different from the classic sort of waterfall, big project type approach. How do you make sure, almost as a sort of a cultural, behavioural approach, that you make digital transformation sticky, that actually doesn't run out of steam, and that people don't go back to, dare I say, an old way of doing things, which doesn't have the power and agility of digital transformation?
Yeah, well, I think that's a really good question, actually. Change is hard. Change is definitely hard. I think, especially the human element to change. It's natural for humans to be wary of change. It's kind of built into our DNA. To change what's going on, and we see resistance to change. And I think resistance can range from inertia, where people don't see the point of change, where they're thinking the existing system works perfectly well. Why do we want to change that? It's worked that way for 20 years. Why do we need to improve that? It's robust, it's error-free, blah, blah, blah. Why do we risk need to improving that? And that comes right the way through, I think, to outright hostility, where people actually feel threatened about their jobs. Okay, we don't need an IT department anymore because the digital transformation team are taking over. So I'm worried. I've got 10 years and I'm retiring. Why do I want to threaten my position? I'm not going to be able to get another job. All the rest of it.
Yeah, exactly. Natural things.
That sort of thing comes out. I made a faux pas myself. When I first was in this particular role, I had a title of Director of Innovation. And IT rightly pointed out to me that innovation could be found across the whole company. So what made this team so special? And actually, they were right. Why did I want to sort of rub them the wrong way? Innovation is across the whole company. Everyone can be innovative. So if I was starting again, I would have called myself Director of DT or Director of Engineering from the outset, and not called that particular rubbing point. Simple thing, but I didn't think of it at the time. Didn't try to do the right thing and distinguish myself from the rest. And it just caused a problem. But there you go. I found these words somewhere on the internet, which I thought was actually quite a good way of distinguishing the two teams. Actually, IT supports how you do things now. Digital transformation changes the way things are done. And I think this is a really good way to give the two teams different missions and actually make both the teams feel valued. And that's really important. You've got to bring people on with you, giving people value. It's just a tip to try to keep the two teams with their own missions there, which I do think is important. That said, I think it's important to protect the digital transformation team from the IT team. If you want to if you want to move forward. You've got to make the effort to engage people who want to hide and don't head in the sand, all the rest of it. It's good to talk. Things aren't usually as bad, problems aren't as complex, all the rest of it. Engage the unengaged, keep people involved, keep them on board, bring them with you. Really important. And that's really important to prove success to everyone. If you can demonstrate success, that's good. Do we have smart objectives for our success and all the rest of it? But choose metrics that are based on user satisfaction. If the user, if we can actually see if we're successful in the way we actually engage the users, we've just been talking about, the user's going to actually want to say, yeah, actually that was quite good. How many people do you get calling the help desk with a problem that's going to give you congratulations? They're always going to call with a problem. Can we actually turn that around and actually users can actually say, yeah, we actually love what's going on here? And that's how you want to measure success, rather than the classic sort of measures on that. And one final lesson about all this is, it's not complicated to achieve digital transformation. It is, however, very hard. It's the organisation, the inertia that people have that make it difficult. You have to prove that change is better to the establishment. The established business machine will always default to what it's always done, and that can be a real problem. And I think there's a cautionary tale linked with that, really. And that's what happened with the government's GDS service. It saved billions. It was really successful. I think it was so successful, other governments around the world have adopted approach. There's a letter from the White House to Mike Bracken saying how great things are. So really successful around the world. But as soon as Mike Bracken left, and I think he actually joined one of our clients, the Co-op actually, and Francis Moore went off to the House of Lords. Civil servants who didn't like losing control of what was going on with kind of digital transformation, which is really part of that whole IT picture. Their influence returned, and the costs started to rise again because we're going back to old ways of doing things. So the moral of the story there is, keep your political and business cover in place. It's not just about the digital transformation team, it's they support that team the way you have the cover for that team to actually implement those new processes in the organisation, because it takes years until the establishment kind of moves. So keep the political and business cover in place.
Well, that's been fascinating, and I suppose it's such a truism, isn't it, that it's really not about the tech, it's about the people in every respect, either those who enable processes or for very valid reasons, maybe uncomfortable and nervous about embracing change and processes. So let's to some extent take the tech for granted and keep focusing on the people.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that's a really important. It's the biggest thing in this is the people. And taking the people with you. So yeah.
Marvellous. Well, that's been fascinating, and I really look forward to our next conversation. So for the meantime, Kevin, that's been marvellous, and I look forward to speaking to you again on our next session.
Thank you, Andrew. Likewise. Take care.
Pleasure. Bye.
Cheers.